It all started with a small SaaS company in Finland. Today, it's used in over 80 countries around the world. The journey, anything but easy. Lessons learned, key insights, hard-earned experiences. This is the founder's point of view.
Hi, and welcome to Founder's Point of View. Today we are going to talk about SaaS pricing and pricing in general also.
Yeah, pricing in general, but we will use SaaS as a key example for this topic. All right. Why the pricing is so important?
It's the only way you can pump up the revenue or also decrease it without winning or losing any new customers. So basically, you can take more revenue from your existing customer base if you can do the pricing properly. That's the key thing, I guess.
And it's the key element to get revenue. So
of course.
If you don't have pricing at all, you are not going to get revenue. So
and
that's
it's only free product.
free business and free product and free value for everyone. So
exactly.
You cannot do business without revenue, and to do revenue, you need to understand that what is the pricing of your business and your services and products.
Yeah.
So it's everything. It's core of everything, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes or many times it's overvalued, I guess. So people think that it's some kind of just outsourced component. You can just think if you want, or just leave it as it is. But it's like you said, it's a key element, and it should be connected with everything. All the core business decisions and ICP definitions and so on.
Yeah, you're right. And today, in this episode, we are going to go through that, what you need to consider when you are building your pricing first time or doing the iteration for it. And then we will check the data, that what kind of data you need to use or you should use when you build your pricing. And then we will check the pricing, different kind of pricing models, the most typically used pricing models, especially within the SaaS, but you can also copy those models to other businesses. And in the end of this period, we will go through also the typical mistakes, what we have done and with what we have seen that the other founders do with the pricing.
Yeah, sounds good. If you start by thinking the pricing from top level, what are the three key things you have to take into account when starting to iterate and do your pricing?
I think the first thing you need to, of course, understand before doing anything is that ideally you would always understand your pricing from your customer's point of view. So you need to understand your customer well, and then the price your client will pay you is the value they get. Ideally, it is always connected to the value what your client can get through your product or through your service, and that's the most important thing you need to understand before planning anything further or doing concrete steps related to the pricing.
Yeah.
And the other thing is of course the market and the competition. How hard is the competition? What is the market you work in? Those gives the frame for you, and you need to understand that how your competitors do their own pricing and what is what is the pricing your typical or potential clients would like to see when they face your service or face your product. And the third key thing is that you need to understand your own costs, because ideally, of course, you can do EBITDA after every project or every service you do. So you need to be sure that you can do profit.
Yeah.
So if you don't understand your own costs at all, you cannot be sure that your pricing is high enough level at high enough level.
Yeah. So basically, if you look at the top level definition of pricing, correct pricing, it's some kind of combination of the value you bring to the customer and market situation plus competitors and your own cost. So what is the level, your absolute minimum level you will need money?
Yeah. So I think that those three elements correlates most. That what is the specific pricing of the specific industry or specific company, because there can be companies who the other company they sell similar products with the half price, and then you can ask how that's possible. That because the typical level of the market is that, the value what customer gets it's that, so how they can do that. And many times you can see that the costs of how they do the business, they don't have similar costs, or the processes are different, and or they for example order most of the things from China or whatever, so they have found different ways to do the similar end result. So
volume is so high that they can just sell it cheaper.
Or the customer acquisition cost is so low that they don't need to take that in the account at all when they do the pricing. So.
Yeah, exactly. So what other critical things you have to take into account, for example, when connecting the pricing to your ICP and so on?
Of course, you need to understand that are you doing the project business or SaaS business, and are you offering your services by hour, or so you are sending fees and the invoices based on the hours you spent with the client, or you spent with the services you offer. You need to understand that also, and then understand that what is the value metric of your business, and is it the per product, is it the license, is it the whatever it can be. So you need to understand that. So that's very important. And same products or same end results can be delivered through hours, or those can be delivered as end results without paying anything related to the hours. So you can just, I want to have that house, the price is that, or you can build the similar house by paying services from one construction worker and ordering items for your house from the specific shops and so on. So you can do the end result in many different ways. But the one other thing which is very important is that what is the ICP you work with, and what is the how big your clients are. For example, with the SaaS business, we have seen that the other company can pay us like 10,000 euros per month from same product, what we have just sold to some micro business with $10 per month.
Yeah.
So it can change a lot, and that depends that what is the ICP you serve, that who are the ideal clients you work with.
Yeah, and that's like natural, because the bigger the company is, more value they will get, obviously, because they can use the product like wider and get more value from it, out of it.
Yeah, and then one thing is also that but you need to understand that is it possible to keep, for example, start from small, so you have a productization or possibilities to test your value or buy a little bit of the value you can bring, and then you can continue later or do the expansions or whatever after that. So if that's possible in that market and you are ready to do that and the guys are ready for it, that might be a good thing you need to take into account. And of course you need to understand the typical psychology of pricing and how people buy things and how they do the decisions, and if you can help your clients to do the better decisions and the faster those decisions, you can do that many times through pricing. So if you have a good concept and a good productization and you can, for example, have 3 packages from your product and things like that, it is always good thing.
Lots of things, but all of those, they are somehow connected to the value customer will get from your product. So that's the most central thing when thinking about the pricing. So how can you do the actual decision, how to get data to make the decision?
And when you start your business, it's always hard because you don't know your clients well, and you don't have data about the churn rates and win or lose data from the sales pipeline or things like that. So maybe the only thing you can do, you can start with the competitors. You can check the potential competitors. You can check the typical most common pricing models of the industries you will be in, or the similar industries where are the companies offering similar services or products what you will do. So do that kind of market analysis, and you should do
the SaaS industry. That's relatively easy nowadays because
it's very open.
Pricing is super open, but there are still industries which are not so open. Like really hard to get the information.
And of course you can test the market. You can ask quotas or offers from the different kind of companies and understand that. But the next step is obviously that you need to start to do interviews with your potential clients and ask them that what would be the good price for this kind of service, and how much would you pay about this kind of service or value what you can get. And then when they start to say that okay, that's the price we might pay for you about it and pay for you, and then you should start asking that okay, let's do a deal. That once my product is ready, you will pay this price for it. And if they're ready to do it, that's a good data for you that okay, that might be the good level of pricing.
Exactly. So the willingness to pay is different thing than closing the deal.
It's totally different thing, and it's always hard when you start your business and you don't have your product or service ready. You don't have the references, you don't have case studies, you don't have anything to build trust. You just need to gather the data through interviews and then start doing the selling and collect that sales data, that what are the cases, what might be the good pricing level where you get most of the deals, you can close most of those deals, and what was the level of the price where you needed to lost.
So that's probably the most classical pricing example for startups or like single entrepreneurs that they are just taking some random price and starting to sell, and if everyone pays it then they will increase the price, and no one pays decrease and so on. Just trying to adjust the some kind of right pricing.
Yes, then that's a good point. And if you select your ICP wrongly, so you select you for example work only with the micro businesses, you will be always too high the pricing, and you cannot do any profit with that pricing.
Exactly.
But if you select your ICP well, you can do with the similar service, similar product, you can take 10 times more money and 10 times more profit.
Super important point, like we mentioned before. Pricing is not some kind of outsourced component you can take into account if you want. It's like strictly connected with the ICP.
And the market and the position in the market and the competition of the market and so on. Okay, and then the sales data, and after that, once you get the first clients, of course, the usage data. And if you start to see that, okay, those clients who stay well, they are very happy, they use these kind of features more, they get that kind of data and that kind of events, they do these kind of actions and events, and so you understand that, and then you should start to consider that maybe we can take that understanding and that product data and usage data and include that to our pricing model. And of course the churn and the different kind of cohorts. So if you see that those clients who used that specific feature, they stay well, they are happy, the retention is high with that cohort and with that segment, that means that okay, maybe that's the element you should also include to the pricing and find a way to connect your pricing to that element or that feature.
Yeah, nowadays it's relatively easy to record all the customer success meetings or sales meetings and combine the usage data with the meeting data with the help of AI to check all the lost deals, all the won deals, all the customer success meetings and so on, and ask questions about the pricing.
Yeah. For example, we launched our freemium product globally, and it was pretty wide freemium when we started, so you could use our product a lot without before paying anything. And then we collected the information that okay, what they actually wanted to do, what was the most important thing they did immediately, and what kind of value they especially tried to find through our product, and then we included that to our pricing. So we built different kind of paywalls to the features they wanted to use more, and actually not to the features but to the value they can get. So they could get some of that value to understand and get the aha moment and understanding of the product, and then when they want to get more that value, or they didn't want to lose the value they have collected, they needed to pay more. So that was the one way to understand that what could be the good pricing, to first offer everything for free and then see that what kind of features or what kind of value they try to get most, and then anchor or connect that to your pricing model.
Yeah. So lots of sources and different kind of tricks to get some data. Just remember to try to get it.
And it was hard. When we started our SaaS business, we came from the project business history, and it was. I remember that it was easier to sell. It was easier to sell 20,000 euros video testimonial package than the $20 per month SaaS license.
Yeah.
And that was
even though it wasn't value-based pricing at all, basically.
Yeah, but still, it was very hard. And then
some kind of market standard pricing. Of course, it was somehow value-based because you got cool videos with a cheap price tag. So
yeah, but still, it was totally different word for us when we started the SaaS, and we studied all the potential pricing models that time, and so we noticed that there are actually a lot of different kind of pricing models what we could use and what we could follow when we are building our own pricing. And the first one, and I think it is maybe not most typical, but maybe the most of the SaaS businesses start with that flat rate pricing. It's one price. It's one price for everyone. It's very simple way to do. So it's $29 for a year, or a one-time payment for the WooCommerce integration plugin from the WordPress directory.
Yeah. So no matter how big is the company, no matter how do they use the product, same price for.
Yeah. Even though I have like 100 million revenue e-commerce, the price is same for me than it is for some micro businesses which has just started their business.
Yeah.
It's always the same. That's a flat rate price, and the second one is a tirade price. So you have like 3 different kind of tiers, like a basic level, pro level, and the enterprise level. That's maybe the most typical and most common.
I think this is the most common, still the most common in SaaS.
Yeah.
So 3 options and still not connected to the usage levels or features.
Maybe it can be with the features. So you have the basic features with the first startup level package and
some additions with the next one. And yeah, that's true.
And the other one, which is very common, especially within the CRM systems and the ERP systems, is the per seat pricing. So you have a price by users. It's predictable, but it can slow the adoption because companies don't want to have that many seats when they start.
Yeah.
They try to save the seats, and that means that they are not going to get as much value as they could get if everyone would use the product. So, and then there is that usage based or volume based pay for use pricing, and it can be, for example, the API push level of the pushes with API responses of use or amount of data collected, or for example now most of those Cloud Code or Gmail, it's based on the tokens, and when it's based on the tokens, it's very much based on the usage and the volume, how much you use the product, and it's a little bit different than the value based. The value based is more about the end result, what you can get, the end value, what you are looking for. And when you are, for example, building something with your Cloud Code, you pay per tokens. You are not paying by the software you build or the project you build.
Yeah. It's actually many times quite hard to measure like the value. Sometimes it's like super clear. For example, if you're getting some leads and you can predict the revenue you will get from those, so that is clear. But many times it's just it feels like even though companies don't have like the clear value-based pricing, they are thinking that they have, but it's really like usage plus add-ons type of price.
Yeah, before going to the value-based, then there's also models like add-on model. So you can have some flat rate or it's a freemium or something, but then you add the features you need.
Yeah.
And you follow that add-on pricing.
Yeah, but it's still just a feature.
So yeah, it is always a feature you open.
Yeah, important to remember that getting some wider limits and more features doesn't mean that you are getting more value.
Yeah, that's true.
It can be like that.
It's it has that idea behind of that.
Yeah.
That ideally you don't use the features you don't need, and then the add-on based pricing is good, and then there is of course the freemium. So you can, for example, use all the features, the whole product, but you can use it a limited time, or you can get a limited value, and then you need to start to pay after something. And then there's that value based, and ideally all of those, all the businesses could be value based, but of course that is not possible. So the pricing is based on the value, not the costs, and it is typically that if you are able to build a value-based pricing, that typically means that your clients would like to use your product more and more and more, because that means that they will get more value, so they will pay more and more and more, and that's a good thing for your business and for all the metrics you have. But because it's hard, it's always hard, especially with the SaaS businesses with many features. Typically the pricing models is somehow some hybrid model, so they can be add-ons, they can be freemium model, or it can be flat rate and then the add-ons and then the some value based, and typically there can be many tires, different kind of tires, and so on. They are really hybrid, what we see now.
Yeah. I like the example you told me when regarding the Finnish episode. Usually companies, they are paying for another companies to get meetings booked on their calendar. And the pricing is usually that you pay per booked meeting, and it can be valuable, but it also can not be valuable. So basically, to like switch that to actual value-based pricing would be based on commission per revenue you have closed from those meetings. Then it's like real value-based pricing.
Yeah, you're right. And ideally, we would pay the commission per revenue made to the meetings. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay, what are the typical mistakes what we have done and what we have seen the other founders have done with the pricing?
Underpricing, of course. So you just get some random price and start to sell your product, and then you're happy because everyone is buying your product, and that's it. But you will leave lots of money on the table.
Yeah, and also I have seen overpricing. So you start your business and you are so bad with the processes and the systems, and you think that, okay, to get a profit we need to set up the price to that level, and you don't get any new clients because of too high price. You cannot get the first cases and build trust and learn to do the process well, to how to decrease the pricing to the level what is good for the market and good for the value what the clients get.
So you won't see any money at all.
Yeah,
basically.
And
my personal favorite is this discount game, when you're just giving random discounts without any idea. Personally, I love the model we are currently using at TrustBread. If we are giving discounts, we are also removing some features or limits from the product. Of course, it's not always possible to do pricing decisions like this, but if it's possible, then it's like really good way to do it.
Yeah, we always tell that why we can give the discount. So we need to take something out.
Yeah.
There's be always good explanation that why I can give you that kind of discount. That's true. Okay, and one typical mistake what we have done is that because you know your business too much, you know all the features, you know all the value and what your clients could get, then you give too much possibilities to your clients so they can test everything, they can fix everything, they can all the combination what they can have in their life, you can answer for them by your pricing. And that is not a good thing because it gives too much possibilities to the client and they cannot decide. It's hard for the client to decide. They would like to see the one price and they just want to hear that with that price they can get the value they are looking for and they can be sure that they will get that value. So that is also a very typical mistake that you overload. You give too much choices to your clients.
Yeah.
And of course that many times once you build the pricing, you don't do the competitor analysis again and you don't iterate the pricing at all. And you lose your market because of that, because you don't iterate.
Have same price for 10 years.
Yeah. That's the very common thing also.
Yeah.
All right. What's the wrap up? Top key takeaways.
Yeah, wrap up would be like, remember the value-based pricing. So try to think what kind of value you bring to the customer and how would you measure it and how would you build your pricing around it. That's the first one. Alright. And second one is when you are doing the decisions, decide with the data. So try to get some data. Remember to discuss with the customers, remember to do some tests and so on. So not just random pricing decisions, but based on the data. And the third one is this iteration. So you should be continuously experimenting and iterating in pricing, checking your competitors and discussing more with your customers and so on, to make sure that your pricing is in your control.
Yeah. Good takeaways.
Yeah.
All right. See you on next episode.
See you. Thank you for watching again.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.